Hey everyone, welcome back to my final installment about how to write great character relationships. If you missed the first two videos, that's fine. You can look them up. You can read about them on my blog. There'll be a link to that post in here. Real quick, these are the things that we've talked about. We talked about giving them a history, making them know each other too well. They share their vulnerability, they grow together, and they foil each other somewhere. So they can't be the exact same. They have to foil each other somewhere. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was taking advantage of the 5 languages of love. So I was once at a Harry Potter conference where in one of the sessions the speaker talked about how Rowling takes advantage of human touch in her stories. She would often mention her characters touching. Well, most writers and stories should do that, frankly, but that was something in particular that she did. There's a marriage counselor, Gary Chapman, and he argues that there's 5 languages of love. Maybe you've heard them, maybe you haven't, but this is something you can look up. You can even take a quiz to see which language of love you primarily are. But here are the 5. So there's words of affirmation. There's acts of service, so performing some kind of service for someone, receiving gifts, quality time, and touch, right? Physical contact. So you can use these languages of love between your characters to make their relationship feel more meaningful. And it can also keep you from relying on the same language too much, right? Maybe you tend to have your characters verbally express if only indirectly, that they care about each other. So this list lets you mix it up and try some other methods to communicate these things and work on in this relationship. So sure, Gary Chapman is a marriage counselor, but this works for any kind of relationship, I would argue. If the 2 people in your relationship are 2 tough guys, you can still use these. You just need to use them in the right way. Like, they don't have to say, "Oh, I love you, man," They can say, "Man, you're freaking boss." The gift one, gift giving, it doesn't have to be super sentimental. It can be simply one guy getting the other guy his favorite candy bar out of the vending machine at work. Touch can be a high five or a knuckle bump. Quality time can be going out for drinks, working out together, or watching sports. So you can tweak all of these things to fit whatever kind of relationship that you have here. Alright, also, this is a kind of a tangent. It totally relates, but it's like not one of the tactics. It's just a point to consider. The meeting, when your characters meet. So once the relationship is established, or we as an audience can tell that these characters are going to have a valuable relationship, we usually look back fondly on their first meeting. So Harry meeting Ron and Hermione. Fans kind of like to I always mess up that word. Sorry, guys. Fans like to remember it. So if your character's relationship is already established when the story starts, you might want to consider having one of them look back and remember how they met and what they first thought about each other. Sometimes the characters start off hating each other, right? Ron hating Hermione. Other times they just hit it off immediately, like Michael and Holly in The Office. Their first impressions of one another might be different than their later perceptions, or their first impressions may simply go deeper, so Sherlock ends up being even crazier, more arrogant, and more intelligent than John first realized. Whatever the case, their perceptions of each other change in some way as their relationship grows. In romantic relationships, the characters usually have what's actually called a meet cute. That's the real term for it. It's usually used in screenwriting. It might be, so meet cute is like a cute, it makes sense, right? Cute, C-U-T. So it's a cute way that the characters meet. It might be one character stumbling into the other, knocking the papers out of her hand, right? Seen that a million times. It might be accidentally shutting the door on the love interest. If you watch about like any given romance movie, you'll see a meet cute. You can even spot it in Frozen. So the first meeting between the characters doesn't have to be significant. You could have one character just like hailing down a taxi for the other and they meet that way. But however they meet, whatever it is, it often grows to feel significant because of the relationship that develops thereafter. that relationship wouldn't have existed without that first meeting, right? With that said, I like it when writers go beyond, like, what I'll call stock meetings, you know? Like, so many meet cutes or renditions of, like, the female looking stupid in front of the male, or dropping her books and him having to pick her up. Like, I've seen that a million times. So, see if you, I think it's cool, see if you can come up with an interesting setting. Think about what these specific characters' first meeting would be like. When Sherlock and John meet, Sherlock uses his classic reasoning of deduction to figure John out. That's a meeting only Sherlock can have. It's not a stock meeting that anyone can write. Their meeting is one of their meetings. Maybe you can use the meeting to illustrate your character's foils, right? Or that they share the same passions. You can make it serious. Perhaps they become friends because they are stuck together in a life and death situation. Maybe they are forced together. Katniss and Gale become friends because they were both hunting to feed their families. Maybe your characters share a mutual friend that they both hate, or a mutual friend who swears that these two people would be perfect for each other. Whatever the case, see what you can come up with to make this meeting original. So take some time to brainstorm it. Alright, so in closing, when you create powerful relationships between your characters, you give yourself a source to pull all kinds of emotions out and into your story. A great relationship has a huge emotional breadth, right? The characters, they'll share laughs, they have arguments, endure trials, exercise loyalty, and expose their vulnerability with each other. It is the cultivation of a great relationship that can enable you to hit your audience right in the gut with laughter in one scene and right in the heart with another. I hope that these different tactics have helped you think about how you can write really great relationships that readers can't resist. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, follow, all those great things. You can get my latest writing tips at septembercfox.com. Thanks, and happy writing!